All right, let's dive into a wild thought experiment. Picture it December 7th, 1941. The Imperial Japanese Navy is just hours away from launching one of history's most famous surprise attacks. But what if something was waiting for them? What if a cutting-edge 2025 supercarrier just appeared at Pearl Harbor right before the attack began?
So let's set the scene. It's a peaceful Sunday morning just after 6 a.m. But that peace isn't just about to be shattered by Japanese planes. It's shattered by the impossible arrival of the USS Gerald R. We're talking a 100,000-ton monster from the future, 3 times the size of any ship in the 1941 fleet, just sitting there right in the middle of the harbor.
Now, let's just look at the matchup here, because this really frames the whole thing. On one side, you have the 6 fleet carriers of the Imperial Japanese Navy, the absolute apex predators of 1941, with over 350 aircraft. On the other, a single nuclear supercarrier from 2025 with only 75 advanced jets. But it's the other stats that matter. Detection goes from a guy with binoculars to dual-band radar that can see for over 250 miles. Weapons go from dumb bombs and torpedoes to guided missiles. This isn't a mismatch. It's a clash of entirely different technological eras. And that gets to the single most critical part of the real-life attack. Surprise. The whole Japanese plan hinged on showing up completely undetected. But the Ford's technology is like a ghost from the future, a presence that's about to haunt and completely dismantle that plan before it even gets off the ground. This is the number that changes everything, 230 miles. While Japanese pilots are still running through their final checks, the Ford's radar operators see them. And they don't see them as tiny specks in the distance. No, they see 183 distinct electronic blips on a screen. Their speed, their altitude, their heading, all perfectly and instantly calculated. So what this really means is, at 230 miles out, the battle is already over. It's over before the Japanese pilots even have a clue that it started. The very heart of their meticulously planned attack has just been shattered.
And check out how fast things unfold. At 5:30 a.m., the Ford's Combat Information Center just lights up like a Christmas tree. 5 minutes later, General Quarter sounds. By 5:45, those revolutionary electromagnetic catapults are just flinging Super Hornets into the sky. And by 6 a.m., the Ford has a whole squadron of jets climbing to 40,000 feet, ready to meet a threat that still has absolutely no idea they've been spotted.
You know, this right here is the key to understanding the whole battle. It's about how these two forces fight. In 1941, it's all line of sight. You have to physically see your target to shoot at it, usually from less than a mile away. But in 2025, it's all about beyond visual range, or BVR, combat. Modern jets are locking onto targets from 100 miles away, firing missiles at enemies they will never, ever lay eyes on.
So what happens when these two ways of fighting actually meet? Well, it's not a dogfight. Not even close. It's more like a clinical, one-sided execution against an enemy that is totally unseen and unheard.
See, the Ford's defense isn't just one wall. It's a whole series of impenetrable layers. First up, long-range missiles from the Super Hornets take out targets from dozens of miles away. At the same time, EA-18G Growlers are jamming all Japanese radio communications, basically isolating every single pilot. If anything gets through that, they face stealth F-35s with heat-seeking missiles. And then, if by some absolute miracle a plane gets close to the carrier, a final, terrifying wall of fire opens up from the Phalanx CAWS. That's a gun that fires 4,500 rounds a minute. There is simply no getting through that. Just try to imagine what that's like from the perspective of a Japanese pilot. 1 second, you're flying in perfect formation, and the next, the plane right next to you just disintegrates. No warning, no tracer fire, no enemy in sight. As the source material puts it, panic ripples through the formation as pilots search for an enemy that's attacking from beyond visual range. The psychological shock would be just as devastating as the physical destruction.
And let's talk about those EA-18G Growlers for a minute, because this is so important. Electronic warfare is basically using the electromagnetic spectrum to make your opponent deaf and blind. Imagine you're in the middle of a vital phone call and suddenly all you hear is deafening static. That's what the Growlers do, but to an entire fleet. The Japanese commander trying to give an order, static. Pilots trying to coordinate an attack, nothing. They're cut off, totally alone. So what's the end result of all this? The first wave of Japanese planes loses more than 60 aircraft before they even see Oahu. The second wave flies straight into a perfectly prepared ambush. The few planes that somehow survive this nightmare are so scattered and confused that their attacks are useless. They just drop their bombs randomly into the ocean. The attack is a complete, catastrophic failure. But the USS Ford isn't just a shield, it's a spear. With the incoming attack crushed, the mission changes instantly. The hunted are now the hunters, and the carrier shifts from defense to a shockingly fast counterattack. And that leads to the big question, right? With all the attacking planes wiped out, what about the 6 Japanese carriers that sent them? Right now, they're sailing completely blind, 200 miles north of Hawaii, waiting for pilots who are never coming back. Well, the Ford has the answer. It launches its own strike package, 30 Super Hornets, armed with weapons that would be pure science fiction to a 1941 sailor. We're talking anti-ship missiles and laser-guided bombs, all heading directly for the coordinates supplied by the Ford's powerful radar. I mean, just look at this comparison. A 1941 bomber is flying at maybe 200 miles an hour, guided by the pilot's own eyes. A modern Harpoon missile travels at over 500 miles an hour, guiding itself with radar. And the jets carrying them are flying at almost 1,200 miles an hour. The Japanese carriers have absolutely no defense against this kind of speed and precision. It's like trying to fight a modern sniper rifle with a musket. The result for the Japanese fleet is apocalyptic. The Akagi, the flagship, gets hit by 3 Harpoon missiles and literally splits in 2. A single 2,000-pound bomb hits the Kaga, and its aviation fuel just detonates. The old-school anti-aircraft guns are completely useless against supersonic jets. In just 20 minutes, 4 of Japan's 6 fleet carriers are nothing but burning funeral pyres sinking to the bottom of the Pacific. And just like that, the entire course of history is rewritten. The day of infamy becomes something else entirely. The attack hasn't just failed, it's resulted in a crippling, unimaginable defeat for Japan. The final tally here really says it all. The results are just brutally one-sided. The Japanese strike force loses hundreds of aircraft and 4 of its most powerful carriers. And the USS Ford and Pearl Harbor, 0 losses. Not one ship sunk, not one plane lost, nothing. By 9:45 that morning, it's all over. The historic attack has been utterly annihilated. Battleship Row is completely untouched. The US Pacific Fleet is at full strength, and the Pacific War has been fundamentally changed before it ever really began. The world is now on a completely different timeline. This quote from our source material just perfectly captures the total isolation of the Japanese survivors. The only people receiving their messages are the ones standing next to them. Their incredible fleet, the pride of their nation, has been rendered technologically primitive and utterly alone in a matter of hours. So, after walking through this completely overwhelming hypothetical victory, what's the real takeaway? What does an experiment like this actually teach us? Here's the most important point. This scenario isn't really a battle. It's a stark demonstration of technology's relentless, exponential march forward. The gap between 1941 and 2025 is so enormous that it completely redefines warfare itself. Concepts we think are timeless, like surprise, tactics, even courage, they become almost meaningless against such an overwhelming advantage. It's a chilling reminder that the wars of tomorrow are often won not on the battlefield, but in the labs, years, sometimes even decades, before the first shot is ever fired.